Hi everyone. Hi everyone, good evening. Buenas noches, good evening. I'm Priscilla Calleros. I use ella, she, her pronouns. I'm the Events and Outreach Manager with the Environmental Center. We are here for November Green Drinks. It's our last Green Drinks for the year, so yay. For this particular Green Drinks, we are partnering with one of our own programs, the Rethink Waste Program. Hubby and Naomi, who I'll introduce in just a few. But we wanted to partner to highlight it's Recycles Day, right? America's Recycles Day. Yay! We like recycling. So yeah, when this came up, we were like, yeah, let's partner and put this awesome event together that the Rethink Waste team has been working on really hard these last couple of weeks. We kind of just pulled it together 10 at the last minute and getting all these awesome speakers tonight. So the Environmental Center is we're a local nonprofit. Since you all are here, I'm gonna save you the spiel on who we are and what we do, since I'm assuming, making the presumption everyone is familiar with our work here. If you're not, raise your hand and I could. Cool, yeah, so I'll just skip that spiel, but yeah, Green Drinks is a program of the Environmental Center, and we host them 6 times a year, and we partner with different organizations, community groups, speakers. We've evolved Green Drinks in the last about 4-ish years that I've taken it on. So we've done a variety of Green Drinks, and we're just excited to continue to do them and continue to partner with local groups, organizations, agencies for 2025. So if anyone is in the room, is interested in being a host, feel free to reach out to me if your organization or if you have a particular topic that you maybe want to discuss at a future Green Drinks. Please definitely reach out to me because I'm always looking for hosts. You could either have a space or not have a space. It's preferred that you have a space so that people can come and tour your space. But that's not always the case. And so we can get creative with that. But if you want to learn more about how to be a potential host for a future Green Drinks, definitely reach out to me and come and talk to me. For 2024, since we're wrapping it up, I just want to thank our Green Drink sponsors, which is Jack Schneep and Coble Brewing, with their financial support. Yes. Green Drinks isn't necessarily like big production events, but they do cost, you know, some kind of money, I should say. Whether it's paying a speaker to come, whether it's providing food or beverages, a lot of that does come through in-kind donations, but sometimes it does require some kind of cost. So with their support, we've been able to do some great events this year. And next year we have Jack Schneep sponsoring again, and there is someone in the room. I can't find her at the moment. Raise your hand, Erica, from Interconnected Diversity is sponsoring Green Drinks next year. So yeah, give it that. Yeah, 2025, I'm excited for the Green Drink series next year. And then I'll be finished talking in a minute. Cafe Yum donated that food today. Yes, yeah. And yeah. And I think that's it. Yeah, we covered bathrooms, drinking water, reusable plates. Please don't throw those away because they're reusable. And please return your name tags at the end. Do not take them home.
It's very easy to forget.
But Yeah, they do have our logo on it, so, and I think that's it. I'll kick it off to Covey and Naomi. Thank you.
All right, this is awesome. This is a room full of people, a lot of familiar faces, but also a lot of new ones. My name is Covey Choksey. I use he, and pronouns, and I'm the Rethink Waste Program Manager. I also want to give a quick introduction to Naomi Serio, who's the Rethink Waste Program Coordinator. She just joined a month and a half, 2 months ago, and she's already she's already dived into this work. So welcome everybody. I'm really excited to have this event and have so many people here. It is called Sorting Fruit from Trash, the Realities of Recycling, and November Green Drinks on America Recycles Day is the full title, if that's not too long. And I will dive into, I'll start with actually a quick video, just to kind of give you a little bit of the layout of the agenda for today. So we'll start with about 11-minute video. Then I'll do a little presentation just to cover a little context and foundations on recycling and materials, sustainable materials management. And then we'll have the most of the time available for our panel, our amazing expert panel here. So I think I've covered everything. If more people come in, just make room for them to be able to sit down. If we do run out of chairs, there's a couple extra in that corner over there. Please return your dirty dishes in the green bin over there. There's also beverages and food. Help yourself. If you have to leave to use the restroom or anything, feel free. All right. And do you want to dim the lights a little bit for this one?
Yes.
Right there.
Recycling model broken. Recycling is broken.
Cities across the country are now re-examining whether their recycling programs waste.
It's kind of a sexy headline. Recycling is alive. Nothing actually gets recycled. But recycling as a system isn't broken.
Recycling is still saving millions of trees, gigatons of carbon equivalents, glass, aluminum. But plastic packaging is contaminating our paper. It's driving up the cost of sorting and processing. It's requiring us to pay more for disposal. We don't have a recycling crisis. We have a plastic packaging crisis.
1 second, I'm just going to see captioning and subtitles in there.
Thanks.
You can like,
Oh, so touch. It flashed up.
Yeah. I have an idea.
it's great.
Model broken. Recycling is broken.
Cities across the country are now re-examining whether their recycling programs waste.
It's kind of a sexy headline. Recycling is alive. Nothing actually gets recycled. But recycling as a system isn't broken.
Recycling is still saving millions of trees, gigatons of carbon equivalents, glass, aluminum. But plastic packaging is contaminating our paper. It's driving up the cost of sorting and processing. It's requiring us to pay more for disposal. We don't have a recycling crisis. We have a plastic packaging crisis. The original idea was reduce, reuse, and then recycle. And that got turned upside down by the packaging industry, who figured out that they could use recycling as a good storyline to what the end of life for their packaging is. But their goal is to sell more packaging. That's the bottom line.
Amber, or the Alliance of Mission-Based Recyclers, formed so we could collectively be a counter narrative to the corporate voice who wants to say that everything is recyclable.
Recycling, to make a real difference today, we have to get back to the original values on which it was founded.
In the last few decades, most of the recycling industry has been bought up and consolidated by the waste industry. They're in it for different reasons.
If your primary revenue source is from landfills and incinerators, you don't have the same incentive to recycle. Amber approaches recycling from the standpoint of creating quality feedstock that can actually then feed into other manufacturing processes to be made to something again. And that keeps trees in the ground. It keeps aluminum in the ground. It keeps sand in the rivers.
We're manufacturing commodities. We're not managing waste.
This is going to be made right back into cans. The energy that this represents is just a vast amount of carbon that is saved by recycling rather than digging more bauxite out of the ground and converting that into aluminum.
This will all be back on the show in the tracker area box in about 4 to 5 weeks. If we focus on being as local or regional as we can with where we sell these materials, we not only have the environmental benefit, but we're creating local jobs and strengthening our regional economy.
You can create safe, family-sustaining jobs and provide a high-quality program to the community and at a reasonable price point. And that's what we're trying to demonstrate as these mission-based recyclers.
Probably get around a good 8 to 10 tons so per day or better. Everyone feels like all plastic is recyclable, so they come out and they're like, hey, that's a recyclable. You're supposed to take this.
Recycling is an important tool to address climate change, the impacts of our consumption, but it's never meant to be the solution for everything we create. And for plastics in particular, it very rarely is.
As you can see, most of what's here is paper and cardboard and cans and bottles. That's what's really recyclable. But also in here is all kinds of other stuff that we have to sort out because some company made it and told people it was recyclable. And it's not. Hi, Lynn.
Hey, Martin.
Good package, bad package.
No, not recyclable.
Styrofoam egg carton,
Bad package.
no good. Plastic pouch,
Not recyclable.
no good.
Recyclable.
Jug.
One of the few plastics that is.
How about cardboard?
Yes, give us all the cardboard.
Cardboard, brown cardboard.
Any color cardboard. Aluminum can.
Yeah, super recyclable. More of these.
Clear plastic bag.
No, any kind of film or flexible packaging is a no-go.
Black plastic bag.
Even worse.
Brown plastic bottom.
Excellent. Recyclable. Packing foam, not recyclable.
We see stuff like this all the time. Recycling arrows on it. Please recycle. Made with #1 plastic. Our end markets where we sell our #1 bottles to, they don't want this. It doesn't melt like a bottle. It doesn't behave like a bottle. It's not recyclable.
The arrows have a number in the middle. Those don't have anything to do with recyclability. It's a marketing campaign. It's really misleading.
Lots of this flexible packaging. It's gonna act a lot like cardboard and it's gonna end up mixed in with the paper and contaminating the paper. Clean paper is the backbone of any good recycling program. It pays the bills for everything else. Recyclers have to pay extra money to have people there to pull the plastics out manually, or to add a new $1 million piece of optical sorting on the paper line that we never needed before.
You can see how much energy and time and money gets spent pulling out plastic from the paper.
We have to shut the facility down for almost 2 hours every day, climb into the screens with box cutters just to deal with the plastic bags.
We say the plastic industry is trashing recycling. This is what we're talking about.
This is material that came into the recycling facility from people's recycling carts and is gonna leave as trash.
This is gonna end up being burned or buried.
Most of what's in here is material that wasn't designed to be recyclable in the first place. So we're seeing things like black plastic, styrofoam, red Solo cups, flexible pouches. How can we expect the average recycler to look at a piece of plastic with the recycling arrows on it and know that it's actually not recyclable?
This is not the average person's fault. This is the packaging industry's fault.
We're seeing industry push false solutions. They're framed and sold as exciting, magical technology that's just going to make the problem go away, which is really enticing.
Advanced recycling, also known as chemical recycling, changes everything. Emerging and innovative technologies can repurpose these plastics into new and useful products. One promising alternative is converting plastics to fuels.
The solutions that they're pushing are either too expensive or too toxic or too complicated or don't pencil out. And so it's just a marketing solution.
The reason Amber is in the game is really to defend the definition of recycling. The important measure of any solution at all is, does it keep it in the ground? Ideally, we're heading towards less stuff, not a way to manage an ever increasing mountain of stuff.
We need them to just stop it. Stop producing so much plastic. Find other ways to deliver goods and services. We can have a modern society without disposable plastic. There are 4 or 5 national policies that can make a huge difference on climate, on ecosystem destruction, on pollution, on resource conservation. If producers have to pay for and manage the end of life of a product, they're going to get much better at designing things that are actually recyclable, or maybe even eliminate a lot of unnecessary and problematic packaging. We'd like to see labeling laws that get rid of the chasing arrows, that require proof that a product or a package is actually recyclable in mainstream curbside recycling programs before it gets a recycling label on it. The only way that you can really get containers back at a high level to recycling is a national deposit return system. Requiring manufacturers to use a certain amount of post-consumer recycled content is a critical way to ensure that we're actually recycling the things that we're collecting. Why aren't we subsidizing the reuse and recycling of those natural resources that we've already extracted, rather than subsidizing more and more extraction?
This problem can't be solved brand by brand. I mean, can you imagine toothpaste? Only if it's these 3 brands, it would be a phone book of a recycling guide, and it would change all the time. We need regulation and investment and support to shift the whole system. I can look out my window and I see a pile of 400 tons of material that, first of all, isn't going to go to a landfill or an incinerator. It's going to go back into the supply chain as really high quality feedstock, and is an aggregate of tens of thousands of individual actions, people that were doing the right thing, making the effort. Recycling is something that we can't do. How we do it matters.
Thank you. All right, thank you for watching that with me. I do want to say thanks to Tim. I think he initially introduced this video to me last year when we were doing our America Recycles Day Instagram Live conversation. And I think it's a really good way to start this conversation, to just have an understanding of what has created the crisis that we're seeing with our materials, especially plastics. But I do want to cover a couple more things very briefly as possible, before we get into the panel discussion. So there's 3 things I want to cover, and that's: why does this matter in terms of our materials? What can we do? And then we'll talk about recycling. I know Priscilla said that everyone knows Environmental Center already, so I will also kind of keep this really brief, but our mission is to embed sustainability into daily life in Central Oregon. And these are some of our programs. We have a Garden for Every School program. We have Climate Solutions, which Rethink Waste is part of the Climate Solutions team. There's also the Energy program as part of it. And then we have a youth education program that does a lot of education in schools in our region. And then this is the Rethink Waste kind of vision statement. The way it's long, you can read it there. But the way I like to put it is that basically the Rethink Waste Project is here to rethink our relationship with materials and consumption here in Central Oregon. So let's start with why does it matter? This is some of the data in terms of the waste that is at not one landfill over the years. So you can see it's consistently been going up. And you can see that even though there is a part of that, the blue line is the recovered rate or the recycled rate. Even though that is also going up, all 3 of them are going consistently up. So we haven't really increased our percentage of recovery as much as we want to. And we do have some ambitious goals.
What happened in 2006?
I think it was related to the economy.
Yeah.
Oh, the economic, the Great Recession.
2008 and now.
Yes.
Thank goodness. I mean.
Yes, I'll keep going, but we can have that as part of the conversation too, since we have our recycling experts here. The one piece I want to mention also, and sure, go ahead, Eric.
I'm sorry, I wanted to know, don't keep you from having to take as many notes. Is there any chance we'll make these slides available?
I will.
Thank you.
Yep, I'll share these slides with everybody here. Everyone signed up, so no need to take super detailed notes in that way, at least. What I want to point out, and this is also something that Tim actually pointed out to me during our last conversation on America Recycles Day as well, so exactly 1 year ago, is that for every pound of household waste, so every pound of waste that we're putting out curbside, going to the landfill, 70 times that is created upstream. So this is the hidden side of it that we don't see for all the materials we're consuming. What's created in extracting, processing, creating, getting it to you, the packaging around it, there's 70 times that amount. So that really, I hope that there's one thing you do take away. There's a couple of key points in this presentation and also in our panel discussion that I hope you do take away from our presentation today. And then I did want to also share this. This is the City of Bend's emissions inventory from 2021, so just a couple of years ago. And so for those of us concerned about climate change and those of us who are trying to do what we can to reduce our carbon emissions, consumption-based emissions are about half of all the emissions that we have here in the City of Bend. So it also has a huge carbon emissions impact as well. So the question is, so what can we do? So you've all seen the reduce, reuse, recycle hierarchy. And I'm glad the video already mentioned it, but it is in order as well. So it's reduce first, then reuse, then recycle. And I think there is a tendency, including myself, until I started really working in this space, to start with recycling. We think that is a solution to materials consumption or materials crisis, but it's not. And I just want to mention a couple of quick tips on how to reduce and reuse. One is just, asking yourself, do you really need to buy something before buying it? Can you buy it used? In terms of reusable, saying no to single use as much as possible, bringing your own water bottle or reusable mug or a bag. And just remembering, I think for me, for reusable bags, it took a long time until I got in the habit of just putting it next to my car keys and then putting it back in my car for the next time I was out grocery shopping. And then repair. You fix the item instead of tossing and getting a new one. We do hold repair cafes in community here a couple times a year where folks who have something that needs repairing or needs fixing can bring it to an event where we have fixer volunteers who are willing to spend their time volunteering and fixing it for free. So we hold these events to try and create a repair culture from the ground up. And I also want to share that our program really believes in action at all scales. So I think sometimes I've had some conversations with folks who say, you know, it's not on the consumer at all to do anything, it's all on the producers. And yes, the producers do need to do more, and there should be more regulations and policies, and we should act to change that. But I do think it helps to have action on all levels possible. And I'll also go quickly on these next few slides, but we also do education outreach in a variety of ways. We have Rethink Waste guides available, both in paper form, but also online on our website. We do presentations and workshops, both here at TC, but also in the community, at different companies, businesses, nonprofit organizations. We also do tabling. We try to go to a lot of community events. Naomi has really taken this on, especially in the last 2 months. But we go to community events and do education outreach regarding recycling and our materials consumption. We also do advertising. I don't know if many of you saw the billboard that we had on food waste reduction, and we also have had advertising in many different other mediums. So that's another way we try to get the messaging out as well. And then we also have some resources on our website itself, including some detailed informative blog posts and signage. And then on the action front, we believe in both the education outreach side and also the direct action side. So we've done a multi-film, a plastic film recycling pilot project with breweries and beverage manufacturers locally that is still going on. I think it's still being led by Deschutes Brewery. We do events, like I said, like repair cafes, but we also model low waste events. So for those of you who've been to our Earth Day Fair the last few years, we've done fully reusable dishware at the Earth Day Fairs as a way to model how to do that. It does take more work. It does take a lot of planning, but you can do it. We also have dishware checkouts. So I don't know if all of you have had our dishware before, but all the dishware we're using at this event is reusable. So please don't throw it out. We have a bin there to collect it. And it's easy. You can put it in the dishwasher afterwards and have it ready for the next event. We give them out to the community as well. So if you're having any get-togethers, especially with the holidays coming up, you're able to borrow them for free. We have more than 4 kits now, so more than 100 folks. And you can borrow for free, wash it, return it. It saves not only resources, but also saves you money. So that's something else I want to make sure you're aware of. And we're trying to expand that next year as well to see what else can we provide as a community resource that we purchase once instead of everyone purchasing one time. And then lastly, we have the Community Innovation Fund. This is something that where we are able to fund projects that reduce waste in Deschutes County up to $5,000 for projects. And it can be, anyone can apply for it. So it could be businesses, it could be nonprofit orgs or other orgs, schools, and it can also be individuals. And I briefly just want to mention this as a big project that we're hoping to take over the next year or two is Reuse Vend. We applied for a grant at Oregon DEQ to really bring reuse at scale to our food service sector, including a reusable container program. So hopefully stay tuned for that. And then on the advocacy side, that's something we also do work on. We have supported both the Right to Repair Act and the Oregon Recycling Modernization Act at the state level, and both of those passed. Woohoo! And they're both now law. So, all right, now let's talk about recycling. I just want to make sure I put this in context. So I wanted to start with this handy little guide that we have created. We've had this for a couple of years. I don't know if everyone's seen it yet. But it tries to put it very simply what is recyclable versus what is not. And I have it as a fridge magnet that I got before I even started working here. And I still refer to it all the time because it's confusing. But the main thing you can see is that there's plastics, there's metal, there's paper, the main 3 categories there. Glass is also recyclable, but it has to be separate as we do it here in Deschutes County. And then on the plastic side, one thing you'll probably have heard me say, if you've seen me before at a presentation, is that the only 3 plastics we recycle here in Deschutes County is that we don't recycle by number. It's just bottles, jugs, and tubs. Bottles, jugs, and tubs. I want to briefly mention this. I don't want to spend too much time on this slide because it can be a little confusing, but I mentioned the Oregon Recycling Modernization Act. Parts of that bill or that law goes into effect next summer. And it is going to make it a little easier because it's going to standardize what is recyclable across the state. Right now, one of the issues is that all recycling is region by region, county by county, or city by city. And this is going to standardize it across the state of Oregon in terms of what is acceptable or what is not. And there'll be a lot more education and outreach happening regarding that, starting spring, and summer of next year. But what I do wanna show you real quick, and this is another video for 3 minutes, so it's pretty short. Okay, so wait just a minute.
Here we are in the year 2028, and recycling is easy and understandable. When the Recycling Modernization Act went into effect back in 2025, recycling changed for Oregonians. Folks living in locations such as Medford and Bandon saw their list of accepted recycling materials expand to match Gresham and Hillsborough. The Portland metro area has a very similar list to what they had before the RMA went into effect. There's a few additional items and a few have been removed. While change is challenging, it was easy to understand the new uniform statewide collection list thanks to education material paid for by the PRO. People who may be confused and place materials into their recycling bin that don't belong there are more likely to receive feedback that helps them reduce this kind of contamination in the future. And Oregonians know that everything on the new recycling list will go to responsible end markets to get turned back into raw materials without causing harm to the environment or the people in that community. People are happy to see more consistent garbage and recycling bills. Now that producers pay their fair share, global recycling market price fluctuations don't affect Oregon the same way they used to. No longer will the roller coaster of global commodity prices mean items are removed from recycling acceptance lists, like we saw after the 2018 recycling market collapse. Recycling continues to happen beyond curbside recycling bins. Extended recycling collection points and mobile recycling collection events run by local governments, nonprofits, PROs, material recovery facilities, and for-profit businesses are easier to reach when walking, rolling, taking transit, or driving. Nowadays, a trip to the store may involve more than bringing home purchases. Today, you may be able to drop off recyclables that you can't put in your recycling bin at home. Recycling collection points near shops and other services accept such items as plastic bags that can otherwise jam recycling equipment, flat plastic lids that act like paper in the sorting machines, and aerosol cans that might hold hazardous chemicals. While at the grocery store, you might also see products packaged in more environmentally friendly packaging thanks to a system of graduated fees. The PROs use what's called eco-modulation to incentivize more sustainable packaging and penalize packaging with the most environmental impacts. The less harmful the packaging is to the environment, the lower the producer pays. Now you know a little bit more about how you, a person who recycles in Oregon, will be affected by the Recycling Modernization Act as it is implemented in the future.
Well, that means. It's fun. It's next year. Yeah.
All right, now we get to the panel part of this. I'm really excited to be able to introduce our panel of local recycling experts. I think this is my first time doing this for an event like this in person. So this is kind of cool. And what I was thinking as I was sitting down is this room is really full, but I really want this next part of this conversation to feel like a more like smaller, tight-knit conversation, casual conversation. So I hope we can keep that going. So first I'll introduce Teem Brownell. He is the Director of Solid Waste at Deschutes County. Teem currently serves as the Director of Solid Waste for Deschutes County, having moved to Bend, Oregon approximately 3 years ago. He has had a varied career through working as Operations Director for Solid Waste District in Monterey, California, co-founding and leading the nonprofit Eureka Recycling in Minneapolis, Minnesota, serving as executive director of Recycle Ann Arbor in Michigan, and originally starting out in the industry in San Francisco, which included setting up the first recycling collection route on the iconic Lombard Street. He and his wife, Carol, love all that the Pacific Northwest has to offer and are enjoying amazing places and spaces in Central Oregon. Please join me in introducing Teem. Yeah. One at a time. Next up is Courtney Voss, the Municipal Manager for Republic Services. Courtney spends her days building relationships and balancing complicated issues with the goal of making Central Oregon communities more sustainable and resilient. While she is most passionate about helping create systems that enable residents and businesses to avoid creating waste, Courtney is dedicated to ensuring that the recycling and waste diversion systems are transparent, effective, and accessible to everyone. Courtney also works the full-time job of mom to a three-nager, who refuses to eat anything except dino nuggets and corn dogs using a toy excavator as a ketchup holder.
That's it.
Oh. Learning space.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we have Colin Teem, who is a regional specialist for materials management for Oregon Department of Environmental Quality, or Oregon DEQ. Colin joined Oregon DEQ in July 2024, so that's a couple months, so we can really test him today. As a regional specialist in materials management for the Eastern region. Prior to joining the DEQ team, Colin worked on the hauler side for many years. He started as the residential ASL trash driver. What is ASL?
Automated side load. So that's what you see in your neighborhoods.
Got it. So ASL trash driver for several years, then was promoted into a leadership role. One of his responsibilities was community outreach for recycling and waste prevention. He launched several multi-tenant recycling pilot projects and implemented a food waste compost program for the local hospital. Colin acted as a local government liaison during the initial phase of Recycling Modernization Act. When not working, Colin can be found grilling for family and friends on the Blackstone. Thanks, Colin. All right. Let's test out if this works. Is this good? Are we good camera wise too? Okay. All right. So the first question I have for our panel here is to first thank them. Thank you for joining us.
Sure. Thank you.
So let's start out by learning a little more about you and how your experience relates to recycling. And actually, before I do that, I'll also say we're starting with a moderated panel, so I'll ask a couple questions and then I'll open it up to community Q&A as well. So if you have questions you're really dying to ask, we'll get a chance. So let's start out by learning a little more about you and how your experience relates to recycling. Based on your background and current role in this space, what would you like the community to know about recycling?
Tim.
I've been, I guess, in the industry since 1990, setting up recycling programs originally in California and San Francisco, and then moved to the Midwest. I appreciate you showing that Amber video. I've been involved in 2 of those 4 nonprofits, Recycle Ann Arbor and Eureka Recycling. And then and a lot of that work was running nonprofits that are advocacy organizations that really have focused on doing operations. So running collection trucks, running the recycling processing facilities to be able to authentically advocate for change in the system. We've seen recycling. Many of you, I imagine, were around when programs were first starting, and we were source separating materials. We had in Minneapolis, there was an 11 sort. So a truck would people would put 11 different types of materials into the trucks. Over the years, by 2000, most programs had moved to two-stream recycling, bottles and cans and paper. And then we've moved to what we have now, single-stream recycling, where all materials are mixed together. That's been a challenge for
everyone.
Everyone. And where it's been challenging is it's challenged what we know about recycling, what we can trust about recycling, and what can go into recycling. The clarity of glass goes in glass, newspaper goes in newspaper, cardboard goes in cardboard. Now we have, and particularly with plastics, we have questions as to what goes where and what can go in. And with the single stream recycling, with bins, with carts, where nobody gets out of the vehicle and tags and says, here's what's wrong, or here's what we don't want in here. Now you don't get that response. You don't get that connection. You don't get that information. So that's the new challenge for us. And is technology going to help us with that? Is really enhanced education going to help us with that? Those are some of the challenges that I see, the opportunities that I see. There's a lot of questions I'm going to be answering, but the last thing I'll say is recycling is not a service. Recycling is an action. It's one thing that we can do that makes us feel better, but we don't want to just make people feel better. We want people to understand the impacts of their actions, impacts of consumption, impacts of wasting. So on America Recycles Day, I really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. Again, my name is Courtney. I've been in my role with Republic Services for about 2.5 years now, so not very long. Most of my career I've actually spent working in government. So I spent about 15 years working for a major city on the East Coast, and left there and came to Bend because Bend is awesome. And started working for a big national corporation. And so that's been a huge shift for me, and jumped into an industry that is somewhat new to me, although the interesting thing about the waste industry is that it's not entirely different than any other kind of policy area or focus area when you are passionate about making the world less crappy, right? And that's fundamentally what I'm passionate about. And so I get up every single day and I'm just excited to get to work with people like Tim, like Colin, who are really hyper-focused on making the place that we live better and making the state that we live better and making the country that we live in better. So it's been really eye-opening and interesting. My role is really to kind of balance Republic is actually a very, very cool company. And I say that and I mean it honestly. And for those of you that don't know me well, you will learn as you get to know me. I would tell you otherwise.
Yes, you would.
I'm a pretty straight shooter. They're a pretty cool company. They are still a big Fortune 500. They're a big company. So I spend a lot of my time helping kind of bridge the gap between what has historically been a community that has been serviced by the little guy, and now is being serviced by the big guy, and kind of navigating those complicated relationships and feelings, and helping educate people about that transition. As it relates to recycling, I would say that recycling, kind of to Tim's point, it's something that we do and we need to do it well. It is not the solution to a problem by any stretch of the imagination. And I think 5 years from now, I'm going to be really excited if this panel discussion on America Recycles Day is about something else. It's about, America Waste Prevention Day. It's about the stuff that we're not putting in the blue bin at the curb to begin with, or the black bin or whatever bin we've left you with, because we still have to do that conversion. But in any case, I think we'll talk about a lot of other issues, but I'm really happy to be here.
Perfect. Yeah, so I think I take a little bit different look towards recycling. I went to school late 80s, early 90s, so I grew up with the chasing arrows, right? You saw the arrows, it was recyclable. And to Tim's point, I started out recycling source separated, the little Kirby bins. And then as the automated systems developed, got the roll cart. So I was just like you guys out there. I would probably call myself a wishful recycler. You know, oh, I think this is good. And I toss it in because maybe somewhere down the line it's going to get recycled. I felt good about it. I did my part, right? But unknowingly, I was contributing to a larger problem, right? And I really didn't discover really how much I liked recycling and kind of can geek out on it until I started in the trash service over on the coast, and then getting into a role where I was doing the community outreach and started learning about recycling. And then with RMA, which we'll start talking about, I'm sure, how we're rethinking recycling. And you know, it was reduce, reuse, recycle. Well, we're shifting that. We're, instead of just looking at the downstream impacts, we're looking at the upstream, and that's that reduce and reuse portion. So I think I come at it with a normal person's view, you know, but have really discovered how important it is, and I'll leave you with this. It really takes all of us individually to do our part and to do it right. Right. That's really what's going to make the difference, is not being that wishful recycler, and to do it right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all three of you. For the rest of the questions, I'll ask them to all three of you, and any of you are welcome to jump in. Multiple folks are welcome to jump in, but there's no requirement that all three of you answer each question. But I'll take it from where you ended, Colin, because I really appreciate you mentioning the wishful recycling. And we've run some ads about don't be a wishful recycler or a wish recycler. Can the panel, can any of you speak to why it's important that folks don't do wishful recycling?
I can, or Tim can. So I've had the opportunity to visit, well, not only visit a MRF, but I've seen it at the curbside collection.
And sorry, what's MRF as well?
A MRF. So I'm going to explain that. That's an old term. We're not using MRF anymore. That was the mixed recycling facility. It is now a commingled process CRP processing facility. So if you hear CRPF, that's where all the recyclable materials go, commingled, to be separated, baled, then shipped to end market. Right. So the problem with contaminants going into the recycle is kind of what started the 2018 sword, right? So we're shipping a lot of our I'll use paper off over to overseas, right? Well, we're putting in plastics that shouldn't be in there, and the sorting process can't get those out of the system, and so they end up getting baled up with the paper and then shipped to the end market across seas. They split those bales open, they take out what they want, and then the rest ends up what you see out on lands and rivers and all that, right? So one of the things I didn't understand was with the 2018 was I had always heard, oh, we're sending them garbage. We weren't sending them garbage. It was garbage to them. It just was the wrong thing in your curbside commingled roll cart. So here locally, when we send it to the CRPFs, if you're putting in the wrong thing, what happens is they got big rollers with fingers. It gums those up, it plugs them up, and they got to stop production, cut it out, makes those machines inefficient. So
really, it's going to drive up costs.
It drives up
slow down the process, annoy people.
Yeah, and the facilities, everything works on a percentage, like you're processing the material, and we can get 95% of the material sorted into the right place. But if 25% of the material that's coming in is not the right stuff, it impacts everything. And when you're pulling out the bad stuff, you pull out good stuff too. So up to 10% of the good stuff was going out with the bad stuff. So it really was impacting the entire system, financially, and from a quality perspective.
And continues to
Yeah.
this day. I mean, when you put the wrong things in your cart, it is not helpful to the system.
Thank you. And that connects to one of the other questions that we get often is just the confusion from the community members on what happens to recycling. Once you put it in the cart and the truck takes it away, what happens next?
Can I do this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
And there's a couple additional questions that I'll ask as well. So where does it go? And then also, what level of oversight is there to ensure that the stuff we put out at the curb goes, or take to a depot, is actually recycled and done so in a responsible manner? And who does that oversight? If anyone? There's a couple questions there. I can ask the second two again, if you want to take it one by one.
I'll do the fun part, which is the process part. These guys are kind of the oversight part. So you have your cart on the curb. The truck comes by. The truck tips the material into the hopper, and it comes to our, we have a facility in Bend called the Moore Building, which is the Mid-Oregon Recycling Building. It's on Montana. So if you ever want to swing by for a tour, let me know. Very cool. There it gets baled. So baled into different kinds of material. If it's just clean cardboard, just straight cardboard from like a commercial business, it gets baled into a cardboard bale. If it's a commingled bale, it's a commingled bale. If it's glass, we have a big glass pit. Then those materials get put on trucks and they get moved to what we called formerly MRFs.
CRPFs.
Which we now call CRPFs. Those facilities are in Portland. And if anyone is interested, I'll give you the names of the ones we use, which is not something we typically do, but we use West Rock, International Paper. We use Glass to Glass for all of the glass. So all of those materials, all of those baled materials go there, and that's where they get sorted and processed from a commingled stream, for example, into their individual material types. And then from there, they go back on a truck and to another facility where they're prepared for the next phase of their journey. So Glass to Glass actually might process on sites some of their material. IP has a mill. International Paper has a mill. Susan is in the back. She knows a lot about this. So they do some processing of cardboard and paper on site. But the others will go to other processing facilities. So like a single can like this will go on a long trip from your cart all the way to the place where it's actually turned back into something that is aluminum. It's pretty fascinating, energy intensive, time intensive, and expensive. That's my spiel. Continue.
You want to talk about oversight?
Yeah. Ask me the question again,
Yes.
so make sure I get.
So the question is, so once we've covered what happens to recycling and where it goes, and then what level of oversight is there to ensure that this is actually getting recycled and done so responsibly, and who does that oversight?
Right, so anybody familiar or have heard of the Recycling Modernization Act?
You've done
A little bit, okay. In the video. So I'm gonna start with just a little bit. So the Recycling Modernization Act is currently in the works, but it's gonna start July 1 of 2025. It's gonna be a dialed in approach. And part of the RMA is to help fix a lot of the problems we've had in recycling. So Oregon's leading this, it's cutting edge. So starting in July 1st of 2025, the oversight's going to be DEQ will have oversight of the MRFs, CRPFs, and the responsible end markets, REMs. And the PRO, which is the Producer Responsibility Organization, will be correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
Well,
just laughing at all the acronyms.
all the acronyms. We have a dictionary of acronyms, so that's why I'm trying to tell you what the acronyms are. So the PRO is required in rule that they are gonna have to be auditing inbound loads, which then that information can come back to the local government. So let's say here in Bend, we're not doing too well. We're gonna be able to identify that and know where that recyclable material is coming from. So we could come back and say, hey, we need to do some outreach, Courtney, here in Bend. But the PRO is gonna be monitoring that. The PRO, when they separate their commingled out, or the CRPFs will be permitted, and they can only send their product to a responsible end market. So on a responsible end market, we're looking at they have to be able to demonstrate to the PRO and ultimately to DEQ that their environmental impacts, let's say they're recycling something, but they're pouring their leachate water out into a river. Well, that's not a responsible end market, right? So we in Oregon will not be able to send that product to that market. So the oversight's really it starts at the PRO, and they report back to DEQ for the oversight.
Federal or state?
Oregon DEQ. So this is Oregon.
Yeah, and so this is in response to kind of what happened in 2018, where the international markets, particularly China, said there's too much junk in these bales. We can't do it anymore. It was also a response to the international community, very concerned about how those materials were being handled in China, but also throughout Asia. So when we're using all these acronyms, but this new oversight system is the legislation that passed in 2021, which was the first in the country extended producer responsibility. So Oregon, along with Maine, passed this extended producer responsibility in 2021. Colorado has followed, California has followed, Minnesota has followed, Maryland is in the process, New York, New Jersey, Washington State are probably going to pass this within the next year or so. So this is in response to kind of real life concerns and customer, that question of recycling doesn't work, recycling is broken, recycling isn't real. It has been, but it had a crisis of confidence. And it had a crisis of regulatory oversight. And so this really is taking a look at that.
Is the producer, the people producing the recycling?
So it's producers are the folks who are producing products and packaging sold in the state. And now they have to this point, this entire system has been paid for by the rates that you pay for your garbage and recycling service. It's entirely paid for by municipalities and homeowners and businesses. Now it's what's called a shared responsibility model, where the first year it's going to be about $250 million. Over the course of the next 5 years of implementation, it's projected that up to $1 billion a year of not $1 billion. Yeah, $1 billion a year of system costs are going to be covered by manufacturers. In states like California, and they're going to have to pay based on how recyclable and environmentally impactful their product is. In California, their model is they can't sell a product in the state if it can't be recycled or composted by 2032. So in conjunction, the actions of what's happening on the West Coast is going to reverberate throughout the country in terms of product design and program design.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So if I could just add to you to maybe answer. So we're talking about a bunch of money that the producers are gonna pay. What are we gonna do with that money?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's a lot of money. What are we gonna do with that? How's that gonna help fix where we're at?
Yeah, that's a good question. So some of it's going to go to these processing facilities to improve their systems. Some of these facilities in this state are entirely manual. People picking materials off. Yeah. Deschutes County Waste. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to think, if I read between the lines, and excuse my ignorance, I know that Oregon's DEQ is what is sort of the oversight for this program you're talking about, but given that January 20th looms, I'm wondering, because I don't know is Oregon DEQ under the oversight or undersight of a federal entity?
No.
So each state by state. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
This is good. I'm enjoying that there's already conversation happening and we're definitely able to go into it. I just remembered that if there are audience questions, what I'll try and do, we're trying to record this as well for sharing since this was a full event. So we are recording it, but the camera is facing basically us four. So most of you are not in it. So no concerns in that way. But I do want to make sure I'm repeating the question if there's any audience questions. Just so that the recording has the question as well. So I just realized I forgot that.
Be able to hear it.
Yes, yes. I did have maybe one or two questions and then we can open it up to the audience if that sounds good. I enjoyed that you mentioned, I'm glad that you mentioned there's so many acronyms and it's very easy. I've only been working in this field for the last 2 years now and I've already gotten, I have to remind myself not to use acronyms. So I'm talking to folks that don't work in the industry, from pros to RMA to EPR to all of these acronyms that we use. I did have a question about the Recycling Modernization Act as well. And I think it's more just so the Recycling Modernization Act is a pretty big change and I think it's long overdue change as well. And I'm really excited, especially about the producer responsibility organization piece of it, because I do think it makes sense to shift the burden to producers of materials. And I do think really putting the economic kind of incentive for them to switch from materials that are not recyclable and that go to landfill and making it something where they want to make that change to can we create this in a reusable packaging instead, I think is a really effective way to do it. And I think it's the right way to do it as well. But I did want to ask you maybe more specifically, how does it impact things from your position? And what are you most excited about?
I work with Deschutes County. We run the landfill. We have oversight over the system. We have a goal in this county of recovering through composting and recycling 45% of the waste stream. That's not a huge number, but we're only at 26% currently. This is going to, and in order to improve what we're doing here, we have to not only increase the amount of paper and bottles and cans, divert construction demolition debris, increase and improve our composting programs, and reduce our waste to, and particularly build out our reuse infrastructure. This is going to bring money into the county that instead of the ratepayers having to build out all those aspects of the system financially on your garbage bill, there will be more money coming into the system, into this county to do education and help support the development of new infrastructure. We want to build a recycling processing facility here in the county that can serve this county, this region, and the eastern part of Oregon, which is poorly underserved. So that's where we're very excited. And there's a significant funding that's going to come in that is geared towards educating consumers about what can and cannot go into the system and building out infrastructure to identify contamination. Yeah.
So in other areas of the state or the country, Are there places that are doing it well, or better that we can learn from? Like, why do they have such a higher percentage than us? And do we get feedback from the stuff that gets bundled and goes to not a Murph anymore, but whatever?
CRPF.
CRPF.
Do we get feedback from them of how much junk was in their loads?
Yep.
And so places that get better ratings, what are they doing that's creating better loads? Is it just education? Is there other pieces to it?
And I'll just repeat that question into the mic here. So what are other places doing that do have a higher rate of recovery on their materials? And also, is there feedback shared from a MRF, which is a materials recovery facility? Is there feedback shared from MRF back to places that have a high contamination rate?
You can talk about the feedback.
So the feedback, so right now about 10% of what we're sending to our MRFs is ultimately trashed, is ultimately landfilled. So of everything that leaves our dump and bale facility here in Bend, which services this entire Central Oregon region, 10% of it ends up being trash, which isn't great. Isn't as horrible as I would have thought, but isn't great. So that's where we're at on that. As far as who's doing it better, I mean, I have counterparts all over the country. Some of them have much better, I think, contamination education programs at the curb. And that is something that we have not done well. I can't speak to prior ownership, but I can speak for Public Services. We have not done that well since we have acquired the company. So things like when our drivers see that there is the wrong item in the cart, we need to be letting a customer know. And we can do that through cart tags. We can do that through phone call. We can do that through all sorts of mechanisms. And that just hasn't been implemented yet, but it will be very soon, Tim. So don't worry.
Question about living in liaison with, like you mentioned, construction, and I live in a place where there's just all these new houses going up in Redmond, and you know, I drive by the bins and there's just so much cardboard in them. That is just crazy. So are you trying to establish like some sort of communication with like Hayden Homes and Payless and all these people to talk to them about how I mean, they contract out so much stuff. I know there's probably a lot. But just is there a plan in place to kind of maybe start addressing some of that with all the new construction?
Yeah, that's.
Before you answer, Tim, I'll repeat that question. So just to make sure I understood, I think the question was, with a lot of construction going on around town, they've noticed a lot of cardboard that is being put in that construction, kind of the waste. And is there any attempts to try and reach out to some of the more dominant builders to try and increase their recycling and reduce how much they're throwing away that could be recyclable?
Yeah, so there are a few issues bundled into this. So one is, yes, here we have an extraordinary construction boom machine. The portion of the waste that is disposed at not landfill, we just did work with the state and identified about 38% to 40% of all materials disposed of in the county is from construction related activities. It's massive. Most places that 40%.
Wow.
About the average in most places is around 20%. So that tells you kind of what's happening here. Part of it is, you know, they're building so quickly and so fast that they're just moving materials in and moving materials out. So that what's most important to them is material movement and space. So the county is looking at building a facility to actually direct all of that bulky debris into and then actually sort. So cardboard, rigid plastics, metals, wood, lumber, at least 50%, probably closer to 65% of that material is recoverable. readily, easily recoverable. We do want to also develop programs where in those job sites that if they will separate or deliver to our facilities separated materials, that there's a financial incentive for them to do so.
And there are people in some of those bigger construction companies that are already thinking about that and interested in doing that. And I think we just need, I think there's a timing issue where we need to have all of the stars align for the county facility to be ready to accept that. And, you know, now that we have Tim as the solid waste director, a lot of that is moving along a lot quicker. So I'm pretty excited to see some of that happen.
And this gets to your question about what are other areas doing that helps improve the rate. It is not just trying to get the recyclables out of your curbside bin. It's really looking at all the streams of waste and what is recoverable. Food waste. Yeah.
Smart buying choices.
Yeah.
So.
And a quick one, because you mentioned food, I just want to take that opportunity. Is there anything you would mention in terms of options available to folks for food waste that could go somewhere better than landfill?
Eat them, donate them, share them with a friend.
Also,
Oh, well, there's that too. So if you have a yard debris bin, we would really appreciate it. In addition to helping the planet, we'd really appreciate it if you would give us all of your food scraps from your kitchen. And that includes bones, that includes meat, that includes dairy, cheese, rinds, everything that you consume in your kitchen, any of the leftovers from that, add that to your yard debris bin. We'll take it, compost it out at DR at not landfill.
As long as we're on that subject, is there a reason why here in Central Oregon, is it the dryness that in other areas, particularly where it's wet, packaging of paper, napkins, all of that goes in, cartons go in, you know, all of that goes in, but we cannot do that? Is there a reason for that?
And could you summarize the question too?
Yeah, so the question is around in food waste or composting collection programs, other materials like paper products, compostable packaging is accepted. Actually, in the state of Oregon, that's changing. The state of Oregon has moved towards only food waste going into the container. And that has a lot to do with where they're trying to have that material go to, which is back into the food system. So for growing, for agriculture, et cetera. What they've been finding is that the compostable products and packaging, they don't decompose at the rate in which those systems are actually working. It takes perfect conditions for those plastic forks to actually break down into the potato starch that it is. Usually it just deforms and looks like a spoon. There are going to be quite part of what's going on in California and is going to be looked at in Oregon is, are there going to be changes in the standards of compostable packaging so that it can actually meet the reality of how compost systems work? But until then, it's a contaminant, makes that material unsellable. The USDA and other agricultural regulators don't want to see shards of plastic in the fields. They're concerned about E. coli and other bacterial.
So we've been essentially not lied to, but falsely convinced that some of those things are compostable when they really are not.
Yeah,
or somewhere.
Yeah,
that's why they can put them on there.
Yeah.
Not here.
So here's adding another.
In a lab somewhere, they are compostable.
Yeah, and there is a certification process for those things. If you see on it, it says BPI certified or Cedar Grove certified. They've actually gone through a process of certification. However, that certification has pretty stringent requirements around how long a product has to be in a compost facility, and most operators don't operate that way. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we got a lot of questions.
We do have a lot of questions, and I want to open it up to everybody as well. I had one last question that I can hold on. I can hold on it.
Yeah.
Let's keep going with some community questions. Yeah.
I know that in the building industry, there's a lot of styrofoam.
Mhm.
What are you planning to do with that?
So that's.
And if we can also just repeat the question.
Yeah, so there's a question around styrofoam. There's a lot of that in building. There's also a lot from.
Amazon?
Amazon or wherever we're getting it from. So under right now, there is no place for that. Under the new Recycling Modernization Act, that is one of the new materials that producers are going to be responsible for developing systems around the state that you will be able to drop it off. So in that fun bouncy little guy video with done by the DEQ, they talked about expanding drop-off options for folks, things like plastic bags, styrofoam, clamshell plastics, shredded paper, a slew of other things are going to be added to that system of drop-off. So it will be available, and that will be starting sometime in 2025. The question is, will that all be recycled in some way? And yes, that they have to have a responsible end market. Now, a lot of that material isn't, so what we want to see is circular systems. You know, it's a plastic bottle, gets recovered, gets recycled, becomes a plastic bottle again, and goes back through the system. A lot of these plastic materials, when they get recovered and recycled, they only get recycled into something rigid and durable, like plastic lumber is what film plastic goes to. Styrofoam will go into a school ruler, a plastic ruler.
Playgrounds.
Playground equipment. It might go into like mud flaps or some, so that next product won't be able to be recycled, right?
It's called downcycling, right?
Yeah, it's downcycling, or you could call it landfilling internment above ground.
All this week on a radio show called Think Out Loud on KLCC and OPB, they've had scientists, and I'll just mention two shows that you can probably watch. Lane County has the cutting edge. They have all kind of sensors and air, and they have a photo analysis machine that they can tell what's in the line going down. They said they're saving their landfill about 20, 30 years. Even though they're charging the consumer about $2 a month more. So we have to think in a longer period of, and we haven't even talked about the aerobics of composting. When the stuff doesn't get composted, it turns into methane in the landfill. Versus, I mean, even if you took your compost and buried it in your backyard, it would be 100 times better than just sticking it in the, that wouldn't be in the system. About a year ago, Pacific Source was sued because of burning down half of the city down in Southwest Oregon. And so they had a survey here, and I was so kind to give my Saturday up. And at the very end, they had 10 questions, and 8 of them had to do with electricity. Could you do it out of water or sewage and yada, yada, yada. And most of the people, or a lot of the people, were really adamant that garbage pickup would be picked up. That was their number one thing. And I go, and I said, you're willing to get rid of these other 8 things? Because it takes electricity to pump water and on and on. And there was silence. And you kind of wonder where people's heads are at. It's really something. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
He led into my comment, which is about the methane in the, I do the same thing in the landfills because of putting compostables in there. So I have 2 questions. One is, has, the public ever thought about giving free yard waste bins so that everybody has one so it's easier? And then the second, well, I actually have three questions. The second one is, I'm the same amount of leaves right now and my neighbor's not around, so I could use hers, but if not, I'd be like, I don't know how to get rid of this. And I know there's a way to haul it and all that, but like, is there a way to like have more pickups right now? Or, so there's another question, because I'm sure I'm not the only one with the same amount of leaves. The third thing is, there's in Olympia, Washington, the food bank has started this program where they go to like restaurants and pick up pre-made food, or they get delivered or whatever, that then goes to the food bank as food that people can pick up. Hey, come get your dinner instead of having to. It just like seems like such a win-win. I don't know if Ben's doing that, but I just feel like we should be, because we have so many restaurants and I'm sure there's a lot of waste. So I don't know if anybody's, not that that's your jobs, but if you guys know anything about that.
And before you answer, if you can just repeat that.
Yeah, so there was a three-parter. It's a three-parter. So the first question was about providing free yard debris bins or food waste bins to the public to encourage people to utilize those. The second question was about having extra pickups during the fall when everybody has a ton of leaves. And the third question was really about kind of providing food recovery and also giving food to creating a program for food to go to people who need it. I'll take the last one first and just really quickly, Susan Baker in the back there. Hey, Susan, hey. So Susan works for Teem at Deschutes County, and we're working together on some of those food waste and food recovery initiatives, kind of with Neighbor Impact, High Desert Food and Farm Alliance. So I would say more to come on that. I think there's a lot of good work that's being done already in the region, and maybe we're just not doing a good job of telling that story. So I think more to come in 2025, is that next year? Yeah. 2025 on that piece. As far as, are we willing to give yard debris bins to everybody as Republic Services and provide free service? No. No, we are more than happy to have a conversation with the city of Bend, Deschutes County about what that service might look like and how to bring that at a rate that is affordable and equitable, and also create programs that enable us to provide that to people that maybe can't afford it. And so happy to have those conversations to roll it out to as many people as possible. And it is a service that is already available in the city of Bend. So if you don't have a yard debris cart, you get one.
And I would just, can I jump on the back of that? Yeah. So in Bend, what they've done is, if you have garbage service, you automatically have recycling service. That's what they call universal service. Yard debris is subscription. So you opt in for it. So one thing that I think the city of Bend will be looking at in their climate action plan is whether there should be universal collection for yard debris, because of the access to food waste too.
And the city of Sisters, for example, is universal yard debris. So if you go to Sisters, those residents have 3 carts. When you move there, you're automatically 3 carts. You get all of them. So that's that piece. As far as additional pickups for leaves, sure. I think that's something we can look at.
Okay. I just want to do a quick check. How many more folks have questions? I just want to see timing wise.
Okay. It's a party.
We're gonna run out of time with some of these. Who had their hands up first? I feel like you did for a while. Go ahead.
It's a question / comment. I think I actually saw something on the papers or one like those stickers that go on produce, the barcodes or whatever.
Central Oregonians.
Yeah, where I used to live, there was an excellent program where, you get a piece of paper with grid, you stick those stickers, you bring a full sheet of paper like that, with stickers, I don't know, 20 of them or so, and you get a free compost bag.
Woo!
And that alone basically created a habit for me and my wife and all of our friends that we shared this with, that basically before we throw any food waste into the food waste container, we take the stickers off. And that's just a habit because it was, made by the incentive.
I've never heard of that, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that.
Great. Yeah.
That's Erica.
So I had a million questions, but in the interest of time, I think what I want to do is think that over here that we're bringing together several somewhat disconnected silos as the way of sort of bridging the gap. This seems like it makes common sense, but of course, in our competitive capitalist market, this doesn't happen, right? How do we cross those bridges and make sure that these things are happening more regularly? Also, just a PR piece for pollinator pathway as much as possible legally for the bugs. And then the last thing, as I think several people have alluded to, I think most of what you have to be is a waste expert to be able to navigate the whys behind this. And I think that that is one of the biggest issues that you all face. And we have technology and we have silos where young people who give a crap are contained. And I know that the environmental centers work really hard, but their budget and personnel are limited for how much access to shit they can have. And I wanted to see what PR, what amplification, what programs that use digital interfaces do you guys currently have under like action that are gonna make stuff so easy to know?
Well, so.
Yeah, Tim, are you gonna make a TikTok?
TikTok. As far as right now, could we all be doing more? Sure. So part of the Recycling Modernization Act, the PRO, they will have to do customer facing education. Like that's, in fact, the county and service providers are gonna get monies from RMA for.
Education.
It can't, I mean, that money is there for, and they got certain criteria of where they can spend it out, but it's really an open door to the county and service providers on how they're gonna do that customer facing. So to answer your question, soon that customer facing education and outreach is gonna be ramping up more than we've ever seen, I think, probably ever.
Yeah, and to your point, I think that within this industry, solid waste and recycling, yeah, we're going to have to adopt new methods and techniques to be able to really hit people where they're at. And it can't be print and standard media.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Okay. And so we have just maybe a couple of minutes left and I do want to end on time. So what I want to say is, would it be possible if folks have questions to still be able to offer them to email to me? I can compile them and send them to all three of you and still have a way to respond to those.
Yeah.
Good. And then maybe for a couple, like 5 more minutes, if people have 1-sentence questions with short answers, let's start with those.
Modernizing the trucks, you talked about a lot of stuff moving around. A new facility here would be helpful, but are the trucks gonna be garbage trucks?
We have our first electric garbage truck running today in Bend.
I want to go look at it. We got to see it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I would add one other thing to that, which is there will be AI technologies connected to what you called camera or optical. The capacity on vehicles to identify as materials are dumped in, are they contaminants? And so there couldn't be, there's access to real time. Yeah. Smart truck.
We're all freaked out about everything in the news lately about plastic in the water, the soil, the air, our food, our bodies. And I wonder when the plastic is going through processing to be recycled into something usable, where does the fumes or the waste, where does it go? Is it just as bad?
Maybe. But there are groups called Beyond Plastics and Break Free from Plastics who are doing a lot of work around recyclability of and impacts of recycled plastic. So the one thing that we don't know terribly well is, are there toxicity issues from recycled plastics when they're put into new products? Because a lot of times they don't know what's going in there. So I would say Yeah, or just if it has food contact or if it goes into your microwave. So those groups in particular are working on how do we create responsible end markets? How do we incorporate that into the criteria that determines what is a responsible end market and a responsible end use? So it's a really important growing component of recyclability and appropriate recycling of plastics.
Okay, Russell, and then person in the corner.
What's going on with the extra thick grocery bags?
They are
What's
so bad.
going on with, just repeat the question.
What's going on with extra thick grocery bags?
After a plastic bag on single-use plastics.
Because they're reusable.
Yeah,
Reusable.
so they meet the 25 use standard to be reusable. Yeah, and we're not sure how where those are able to be recycled. They aren't stretch plastic for, so that will ultimately fall under a covered product here in the state. And we'll have to, will be eco-modulated into some sort of compliance.
Okay, last question.
I apologize if you've already covered this, I got here a little late, but if there were one place to go to for like a sheet that I can print out for work or home, what's the best place? Is it through Republic Services that has like where would you suggest of like the best guide? Okay.
We have the Rethink Waste guide at rethinkwasteproject.org, and you can get the guide. We also have some outside in paper form. We're running out of the paper form, so if you're okay with digital, recommend that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would add also Cascade Disposal has an app that you can use, and in it's got a wizard, and that you can ask the wizard questions as to what can you do with any individual product.
And I'm not promoting a competitor. However, it is a cool app and it is a cool product. So I don't think you have to be a customer to use it either.
Cascade
Cascade.
Disposal.
Pro tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's gonna be it for questions. I do want to thank our panel again for coming today. And in terms of just closing remarks, the one thing I want to share is that I was pretty hesitant to do an event on America Recycles Day. Part of what we're trying to do, especially at the Rethink Waste Project, is move the conversation from recycling to reduce and reuse. So it's kind of this interesting dynamic of there's a lot of interest in recycling. As we can see here today in the community, a lot of people have questions, there's a lot of confusion still, and we do want to address that and clear that up, but we also want to move the conversation to reduce and reuse as much as possible. So I just wanted to share that when you answered, I think, Courtney, about like talking about recycling as well, and hoping that in 5 years we're not talking about recycling, we're talking about those other alternatives more and prevention in the first place. I hope that's true as well. And as a program, at least, that is where I think we're dedicating and planning to focus on majority of our work and effort over the next years, especially next year as well. So I just want to mention that, but we also know there's a lot of still questions, confusion, interest in recycling. So you can still come to us. You can go to our website. There's some information there. And everyone who's here, I'm sorry if you didn't get to your question today. Definitely email me. I'll compile those. We'll get them answered. And then we're also going to share the recording from today with everybody, including the people on the wait list or just our whole list. And we're also going to create a blog to try and summarize some of this information as well. So we will be following up with more information in an easily accessible way for everybody. So I just want to say that. And I did have some closing slides. They're very brief. One is I wanted to just make a quick shout out for a Repair Cafe that's happening next week. We have some fixers in the room. If you're a fixer, raise your hand. This one is in Redmond at the Redmond Proficiency Academy. If you have anything broken, clothes, small appliances that have issues, any outdoor equipment, any kind of item, most items we are able to fix. So you can sign up. There's a QR code there, and I'll also include that in the email follow-up as well. I also wanted to just give a quick shout out that this is our 35th year, and we're trying to reach a new goal of 35 new monthly donors. So thank you also, I forgot to mention this earlier, but thank you to everyone who made a donation as part of coming to this event today. You didn't have to, but we really appreciate that. I think about a third or enough folks made a donation. Thank you. And if you are interested in continuing to support this work, you are able to make a monthly donation as well. Any amount helps. One more shout out, Elaine, Orier had asked me to add this slide, but, do you wanna just talk real quick?
Sure. We're fortunate to have a really active and prominent statewide recycling association, the Association of Oregon Recyclers. We rotate around the state, and every 3 years we come to Bend. So next year, 2025, June 23 to 25, we will be back in Bend. Woo! And there's already a conference planning committee. Some of us are on it, Susan Baker. We're doing really fun stuff like planning field trips and tours and socials and silent auction for scholarships. So if you want to be engaged in any way in that planning committee or otherwise, please give me a jingle, talk to Susan, stay after. Thanks.
Thank you, Elaine. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you all.
I know you're not answering me, but. Really, I work with Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Exciting, and even first.
Thank you.
Thank you.